Hotseat. Catch the fire tonight on KFM's Hotseat. Every weekday, 7 to 8 p.m. It's hot, it's live, provocative, and digs deep into the issues. It's KFM's Hotseat. The hottest debate on all relevant topics, live on KFM's Hotseat tonight. KFM's Hotseat. Every weekday, 7 to 8 p.m. KFM's Hotseat. Only on 933 KFM.
Good evening, Uganda. You're listening to 933 KFM. This is the Monday edition of the Hot Seat, and standing in for Patrick Kamara is me, Kwezi Tabaro. Today, my panel and I are discussing election financing and the role of money in the electoral process. As you may well know, we are gearing up to the 2026 elections, and political parties are already aligning their candidates and various formations as we prepare for the general elections. But however, before I introduce my panelists, a bit of sad news that came in this evening for the sports fans, especially those that follow Ugandan soccer or football. You will have heard of the passing of the former Uganda Cranes goalkeeper and coach, Mr. Fred Kajoba, who passed on this evening in Tanzania. Now, in his heyday, Kajoba played for Kofi and Simba football clubs and was the first choice national goalkeeper in the mid-90s. His Simba side reached the 1998 Stanbic Uganda Cup final and then Kakungulu Cup final, losing 2-0 to SC Villa. He will be remembered as a prominent football player for the Uganda Cranes, but as well as a coach. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Now, introducing my panel, I have today in studio to discuss election financing and the role of money in politics. Mr. Henry Muguzi, he's the Executive Director for the Alliance for Finance Monitoring. Mr. Muguzi, good to have you.
Thank you, my brother Kwezi, and of course our listeners. Good for me, a pleasure for me to be here.
All right. I also have a regular panelist on my Monday show, Mr. George Musisi, who is a human rights lawyer and a partner at Pace Advocates. Good to have you, George.
Good evening, Kwezi. It's a pleasure to be here and honored to be here with Honorable Babu and my brother Henry.
Yes. And last but not least, we are joined by Honorable Captain Francis Babu. He's an elder politician and NRM member. Gentlemen, I'll start with you, Honorable Babu. You were in elective politics perhaps 30 years ago. Were elections as expensive? Well, from the start. You're best placed to give us an insight. Were elections always this expensive? Because George and I were discussing, and he was telling me someone who spent 3.5 billion in a small constituency in Kampala in just the previous, in the last election in 2021. Was this always the case? If not, what has changed?
Well, before I go to your question, I'd like to thank you very much. I'd like to thank you to our listeners that KFM has invited us. Thank you very much. And for having us. And for the other two panelists who are very experienced people. Now, you're asking a question very quickly. Let's talk about it as a topic. You should bring it as a topic. Campaign funds. Very, very important. How does this come about?
How does it come about?
Okay, first and foremost, there is the normal, which is the logistic of any campaign candidate.
That you have to hire election agents, you have to have trucks running around?
Yeah, you've got to do your photos, your images, you've got to go on media, everything. That one is a normal one, which is what you'd call operational budget. Okay? Then there is this one that comes out of our trait. Because we are competing, we get excited. Somebody is competing, says, how do I beat this opponent of mine? Now, there are many things that come out of what I've realized in the third world countries, especially like in Uganda, where people get excited during elections. And they come out with certain traits, which is very unfortunate. One of the traits is to intimidate your opponent. The other one is to blackmail. The other one is to lie to your constituency. The other one, and those ones who are smart, who have got money, they think by using money, they can buy the voters. But that's a very interesting area we must look at. Now, this has happened in other countries also. In some countries, because of the new sense of using money, during elections, they've got laws that governs how much you can have during election in terms of funds. Now, even in America, they have it. So when we've done that, then you sit down and say, how do these people raise money? Now, there are many ways to raise this money. You can raise it because you have it, or you can raise it by working with certain people who you promise to do things for them when you get into
interest
power.
groups.
You get into power. No, when you get in power, they give you contracts, I'll do this. And this, unfortunately, is the nastiest bit about it. And that's why election fund must be monitored very seriously. The candidate who's there might not be your candidate. He might be the candidate of the people who funded him or her. Now, these are extremely important, and these big corporations have been involved in this. Now,
is this in Uganda?
Everywhere. Oh, there are companies that give money to certain people to go there and they talk to them. And some of them even come from civil service, by the way. And they give people money. Now, this has been brought up because of the weakness of the way we campaign. Some of us don't know how to campaign. We know to order around. We like to brag. We like to show off. And this is where it becomes a little bit of a problem, because when you do that, you must sustain that using money. And money is used to go into a nightclub, to go into bars, to go into different places, to promise heaven and earth. Unfortunately, this is all wrong. And we need the Electoral Commission to have a department, first of all, which says, one, you must, but you're supposed to show the kind of funds you've used during elections. You're supposed to have, your party is supposed to show. Now, this is an area that is very, very difficult. Because if somebody gives money to somebody without any paperwork or anything like that, you'll not be able to trace it. So money has been used as I was using the other word for enzyme is what, Mukasa? Catalyst. Yes. This was a catalyst to try and get an election done. So, when you're asking me unfortunately for us, when we started this election, people were very interested in getting leaders. They were not interested in money. They were much more interested in getting a good leader. In fact, the first election that went to this level was the CA. Where
1994.
Where we had the candidates meeting. A candidates meeting, they brought all of us in a place, and we stood in front of the big crowd which had been brought, and you would speak. Now, there was no bribery there, because the people who mobilized those who came, was not you. It was the people who were holding the elections. Now, there, people were elected on merit.
I want you to hold on to that point, and I want to come to you, Mr. Henry Muguzi. Democracy and money. The more democracy deepens, at least from my observation, you cannot divorce money from democratic politics. What he's describing was almost a one-party state. We were all under the NRM umbrella. It was individual merit. But when you bring in different shades of opinion, opposition, government, NRM, FDC, of course the contestation is going to be on ideas, but also on who can raise the most money, who can spend the most money. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, of course. Now, it's been told from very many years back, for as old as democracy, somebody coined the phrase that money is the mother's milk of politics. In other words, you cannot have politics without money. Yeah, so those two are Siamese twins. When it comes to democracy, money is one of the critical components. But money, which is one of the critical components, just as milk is to a baby, too much milk is also not good for the baby. So too much money is also not good for politics. So what happens is that in societies where there are no
safeguards,
safeguards, no laws, no administrative provisions to regulate the use of it, it has all gone haywire. In Uganda, for example, Honorable Badu reminds us of CA. But also we remember quite vividly that I think it was in 2006 elections when we returned to multi-party that all hell broke loose. We saw some of this money in 2001 when Besige came in and brought a lot of heat, blah, blah, blah. But 2006, we started to see that money actually works. Now, one of the reasons...
2011 literally broke the bank.
Today we are at a level where it is actually unacceptable that a candidate for a woman candidate for Kampala woman MP spends 3.5 billion and doesn't get elected. This can't be. If you asked all the candidates that failed, and we did in 2021, why do you think you failed? They will tell you that if I had more money, I would have aged my competitor. So it boils down to money. But let me go back to where the cause comes from. Because I study money in politics on a daily basis. This is my major preoccupation. But I think there is a sense in which the political parties have let us down. So what happens is that political parties naturally are supposed to identify leaders, nurture them. And after some good time, after they think these people are ready, they present them to us to elect. The political parties no longer do that.
And the reverse happens. So
you have people that get to be nominated, but they don't even know what to tell the electorate. You get? They don't know what to tell the electorate. They're just there. That's why, if you looked around on many of their campaign rallies, they're just dancing. Beyond dancing, there's nothing they can say. Which is why now the only thing they can use to get the electorate on their side is money. And of course, in a country where people have gone and elected the legislators, elected the councillors, and this electing has not translated into improvement in their lives, they have given up on democracy. But also when they see the behavior of the men and women who have elected in political office, the way they throw around money, they dang around with the money, some of them, immediately they step into political office, even their body shapes change. So the people say, okay, it means there is omulio. And therefore people now, there is a tendency now to say, if you want to go to access politics,
give us our share now.
But also, we are trying to understand why in our country, the richest men and women are largely also politicians. Those that are doing well in business are those that are connected to politicians. What is it that is driving these men and women to get into politics and get rich? And when we see what we are seeing now, recently we had the Twitter space, and we know what is happening in political offices. People throwing money around and talking about numbers that can just run you numb. You get to know that now we have reached a level where every Ugandan that
that's the middle class.
I'll interrogate.
We are creating a middle class. I wanted to say one point. He made
before you say that, I wanted to bring in George Musisi.
No, I want him to come.
They ran an interesting campaign in the last election, NUP. I don't think the NUP MPs who won, especially in Buganda, won because they spent the most money. In fact, some of them spent the least money. Or no money at all. So what did NUP do then?
That's true.
Parties didn't do.
That is partly true.
That is partly true. That is true, because even the candidate Henry is talking about, who spent 3 billion, was defeated by the NUP candidate. I don't think the NUP candidate spent even a quarter of that. But how did we get here? And I'm going to get into a question, Kwezi. You find that in many constituencies, and the president has lamented about it so much, although they have not done a lot to ameliorate this, leaders, not just MPs, are service providers. I was talking to an MP on Saturday. He represents a constituency in Rakai, and was saying, I know I've just bought a water browser, I've just bought 5 Pro boxes to act as in ambulances. You know the test of an MP in many constituencies, you have to buy an ambulance. I remember someone who has been criticized that, this man has been my friend, the Honorable Ronald Chivoli. This man has been MP for 10 years and even bought us an ambulance. So MPs or leaders are judged, they are replacing government when it comes to services. And I've ever asked another MP after the last election that how much did you spend? What returns are you getting? Where did you get this money? Because those are questions we should be asking, that how come this person, even if you asked the person, example Henry cited, where did she get the 3 billion? Is she a strong business person? So where do you get this money, and what returns do you expect to give you that amount of money? Now, how comes opposition stroke NUP run a campaign? Remember, even in 2016, I think one of the things which changed, Dr. Kizza Besigye was being given money at campaign rallies. Do you remember that? If you are running against another person who is outspending, especially because there is always a difference usually a difference between urban areas and village constituencies. In village areas, you are judged more by level of service provision. You have to bury and give something. You have to give a water browser. And And then for government,
constituencies.
for urban constituencies, it's a little different. It's more of logistical. But then again, NUP is usually, opposition people usually spend much less than government because people have come to associate government, NRM, with money. First of all, I even pity them because they go through a very expensive primaries campaign, and then so people have come to associate and say, and then you can't run a campaign to outspend them because they have Bank of Uganda.
So you think that's why
you cannot run
Babu lost?
You cannot run a campaign on the basis of outspending them. Because I was talking to a friend of mine, an MP from Busheng, and was saying that, if you are in our place, if you are going to, it's not enough to have enough votes. You have to either outspend your opponent or outbeat them in violence. You have to have one of the two, not just the votes. The moment your opponent outspends you, you are gone. And I think that's what was talking about. So I think the difference with the opposition, that's always a little different, because even if you look at some of the people who contested in Kampala, Honorable Seginyo Bornyeko, they didn't run very expensive campaigns, but how comes they won? That's because of the message.
You're listening there to George Muguzi, a human rights lawyer and partner at PACE Advocates. We'll take a short commercial break, and when we come back, more of this discussion.
The hottest debate on all relevant topics, live on KFM's Hot Seat tonight. KFM's Hot Seat. Hot Seat. Hear the real story behind the story. Coming right at you. Only on 933 KFM.
Welcome back from the break. You're listening to 933 KFM. This is the Monday edition of the Hot Seat. It's hot on and off air. Standing in for Patrick Kamara is me, Kwezi Tabaro, and today in studio I'm joined by an elder and a veteran politician, the Honorable Captain Francis Babu, George Muguzi, who is a human rights lawyer and partner at PACE Advocates, as well as Henry Muguzi, who is the executive director of the Alliance for Finance Monitoring. In the last segment, we were talking about elections financing, and we moved from comparison of election spending during the time of CA and to where we are today. Honorable Francis Babu, I want to come to you on the issue of elections financing.
How much did they spend?
As George had mentioned. Are you at a disadvantage as an NRM leading candidate?
No.
You say so.
Let's not. Is
it as clear cut as that? That if you're an opposition member, you have an easier race if you're an NRM member?
No. That was a wave that might not repeat itself. Let us go to a very simple thing. First and foremost, he was making a point. I want you to know, democracy you're talking about is a capitalistic democracy. We are copying it from the West. In the West, anything that you want to get into, you get an agent into parliament or into government, helps you to enhance your profit. Therefore, democracy from the capitalistic country is going to involve itself with a lot of money in it. Now, to go from there to the point of saying that there was a time with all sorts of the campaign where people had a very bad and hatred of the government. And especially the president for having stayed in power for a long time. And it's not only the Ugandans, a few Ugandans, there was also foreigners who did not want him to continue. Now, they did all sorts of things. In fact, they believed that by getting some of the... First of all, they did it with Besigye. Unfortunately, they even tried to... You remember... They
did what, exactly?
They supported.
They supported financially, materially?
Yeah. They also supported them when they tried to make an opposition coalition. Remember? One of the elections. And in fact, that's where... what's the other man called? The reform agent? What is it called? This man with the orange. This Mr.
Orange.
Yeah, after that coalition, which failed,
yes,
Mbabazi stood.
TDA.
Yes, TDA.
Yeah.
Go forward.
It's go forward. Yeah, he stood and others. There was a lot of money here. They are involved. Again, to try...
Whose money? Ugandans?
Foreign money. My friend, when we're on radio, you cannot name our brothers and sisters from outside. It will not be fair. But there was money involved. And this money was given to them, and they know about it. In fact, if you were to get their treasurers, and they were nice, off the air, they will tell you how much money they got.
But, Honorable Babu, if whatever we've been discussing is true, then why didn't the opposition win if all it takes is money? So they didn't get enough compared to what they were spending?
When they did that coalition, they got divided. Towards the end, they got divided. And one guy went that way, they wanted one candidate, they ended up with about...
three candidates.
Three candidates, yeah? So immediately they were all divided. And then the division, these guys were consolidating theirs. Even now, if you look at the whole country, NRM does consolidate its areas and still has the majority. Some areas, of course, go the other way. That time, if you remember, a lot of FDC came from the north and northeast. This time, the other party, they came from Buganda.
The central.
Now, this is brought about by a wave of the kind of campaign. Now, the kind of campaign I've seen in this country is against one person. That is the president of NRM and the president of the country.
So it's a referendum against President Museveni.
That's right. Now, when that happens, sometimes you get a few people who say, yes, I think this is right. And that kind of campaign is also got its limit. It does fail. But I want to assure you that money has been used in one way or the other. The sources might be different. Some are from the local corporations. In fact, some of the big businessmen who did sponsor some of these parties have even left the country and gone to other countries to open their businesses there. There are others from foreign countries, which I'm sorry I will not name. They have given this money to different opposition groups to stand. Yes, there are some opposition people who did not have that money, did not get involved with that money, but there are others who got involved in that money.
I want to bring in Henry at this point. This is something you spend quite a lot of time doing. Is there a credence to what the Honorable Babu is saying?
Absolutely, there is. So one thing I wanted to mention is that, of course, we did a scientific study in 2021. Our findings reveal that in 71% of the cases we monitored, the candidate that spent more was also the one who was declared as winner. And this winning, sometimes...
There's a difference between winner and declared winner.
Absolutely. Declared winner. Okay. Declared winner. Because sometimes in the country like Uganda, sometimes you can be third and be declared winner. For as long as you can spend. This is Uganda. So I have heard about that, and some of them have been challenged in the courts of law.
Examples are everywhere for us to see.
Let's listen to Henry.
Now, you see, but the biggest problem is, where does this money come from? We're talking about foreign forces. We know for a fact that there are many foreign rich men out there that, especially in the global north, that want to play around the sovereignty of African states. For example, someone is taking money as if he's taking money on betting on Arsenal and Man U, and saying, let me take money so that Museveni falls. That is his satisfaction. So there are so many of those that come in, and those intentions are ill and should never be accepted.
But then whoever takes the money, that would be a treasonable offense, right? Absolutely.
The problem is that we do not have the mechanisms to establish and understand the sources of this money. We have lacunas, and my brother Muguzi will speak about this. We have lacunas in other countries. They have encouraged transparency to the effect that you must declare the source of your money. And how much you've gotten from that source, so that even the voters that are going to contemplate who to vote for should know who is funding Kwezi. You get? In our country, nobody gets to know. Now, of course, most of the other money comes from private businesses. You see, in any country, a government is the biggest source of all manner of contracts, big ticket we're talking about. And therefore many corporations out there would want to have a say in who gets the contract thereafter elections. A lot of companies here that are already contracted to government go on and bankroll the
next election because they want
to power so that it stays, because they want this status quo to continue, and they continue eating. A lot of companies, including at the lowest level, the district and sub-county contractors, have bankrolled candidates, LC3s, LC5s, so that their men go into power, because when they get into power, then they get to hold the sway and have the platform to determine who the decisions of procurement.
You've just described democracy there, because these are the same concerns we hear, not just here, but also in the global north. You've heard of the role of corporations in American elections and things like that, where people feel that corporations own these politicians and not the other way around.
They have actually captured them. So we also want to fight and prevent a situation we call captivity, where a whole government has been captured and pocketed by a rich company.
George Muguzi, I want you to come in here as the lawyer. Do you think, well, if in this case NUP came to power, would it be something you'd prioritize? Election finance laws and
transparency.
And transparency?
Well, for starters, to answer that directly, I don't think the challenge is even lack of laws per se. Because, for instance,
It's true.
if you look at our electoral laws, Parliamentary Elections Act, Presidential Elections Act, they regulate the amount, for instance, of giving out of gifts, tokens in elections. Why can't they still do it? It's because lack of enforcement and will. If you look at the Political Parties and Organizations Act, it regulates even sources of money, where there are some places and organizations which you cannot receive.
For parties, not individuals.
For parties, yes, which you cannot receive
But here you have
funding
a
from.
scenario where individuals proclaim their interest to run for office and go around shopping for
Right,
parties. In fact,
individuals
they
have
buy
no legal
parties.
framework.
They buy
Individuals have
parties
no
as
framework.
vehicles for their campaign.
Do you know anyone has ever bought a party?
There have been claims that the NUP.
Well, what I know is it didn't buy. You can advise you as a lawyer. There is a court judgment.
It was a token.
You know.
George, not to be
Because
distracted, please.
I don't want to be distracted, and I don't want to engage in street gossip. There is a court judgment where Justice Sekanda described that as street talk. That someone who went to court saying these people bought from a party. Justice Sekanda said that
Was it
street
after
talk.
lunch or before lunch?
So I don't want to engage in street talk and the basis of the court judgment. But most importantly, there's this whole thing that Captain Babu and Henry are talking about foreign money. I think that is one of those rumors which are largely used as which are largely used as. Let us first talk about the money we know before we go into speculation.
Okay.
NRM is even if you ask the treasurer today, cannot tell you the source of the monies they spend. Let me tell you.
The treasury.
No, the national treasury.
So then if we agree on treasury. Listen,
let me make my point, Kwesi, because I'm being distracted.
Principle that the NRM spends.
Let me first make my point.
Do you also
because
agree principle that NUP spends from foreigners?
That is your question, which you will ask after my comment. That before you go into the speculation of where these people could get money, let's talk about the money that we see spending. Henry talked about a candidate who spent 3 billion. She was an NRM candidate. Who asked
Maybe she was
these
a
people?
private business person.
Yes, it could be. But I'm saying that who asked these people that where is your source of funds? What do you expect to get in return? NRM MPs, for instance, go through very expensive primaries. There is one in the Bushenyi side who said that I spent more than 2 billion. So after the expensive primaries, they go through another general election. The party contributes even some money. I think last time it was 25 million. Captain Babu has been talking about people, NRM sponsoring opposition candidates. He doesn't talk about, even if you talk about these the foreign money, maybe it's NRM you're calling a foreign force, because we have a political party which has broken up because of NRM money. We have a political party, the FDC. So if you asked the treasurer, Mr. Todong, the treasurer, even the SG and that where did NRM, he won't tell you. They'll tell you the president is our chief mobilizer.
When the government of Uganda is broke, NRM is also broke.
It's also broke. So the coincidence is quite telling.
No. Even NUP is broke.
So if you're going, of course, NUP gets money from government for information officially. But one of those things that are highly overemphasized, that everyone
George,
here,
without politicizing the whole debate, don't you think, in and of itself, regulation of campaign spending is good, whether it's NRM, FDC, NUP?
The issue is
for the good of our democracy.
Yes, it is. It is, because what is happening is that it undermines democracy directly. One, it pushes otherwise sober leaders like Kwesi away, who say that I'm not ready to spend 1 billion in a campaign. I would rather spend it in my farm. And then it lets maybe the crooks who can buy their way go into elective politics. Secondly, even the electorate, having been totally bought, you expect less from the man.
You can't hold their leaders to account.
You can't hold your leader to account, because the man gave you. I participated in an election in 2017 in Bushenyi, where a candidate was buying voters on polling day at 2,000 shillings. 2,000.
Less than $50.
Less than $50.
Which year was that?
2017, December.
Then
there was a by-election.
It was substantial.
So even Captain Babu here, when he does participate in an election, he doesn't even know how much he used.
No. I don't use one.
You'll tell us when we come back from the break how much you use. We'll take a short commercial break.
It's hot, it's live, provocative, and digs deep into the issues. It's KFM's Hot Seat. The hottest debate on all relevant topics, live on KFM's Hot Seat tonight. KFM's Hot Seat covers all the relevant topics every weekday, 7 to 8 p.m.
Welcome back from the break. You're listening to 933 KFM, and standing in for Patrick Kamara is me, Kwezi Tabaru. And in the last two halves of the show, we're discussing the role of money in electoral politics in Uganda. It's been a heated discussion, quite animated points made by my panelists. But I want to come to you, Henry Muguzi. Is there a way we can make it legal for political parties as vehicles of, electoral politics, to one, be the only legally accepted platforms through which people can mobilize resources, spend, and that those political parties would account to the Electoral Commission? I don't know if it exists in our laws or it's something that can be worked on. And do you think that would work?
That is the ideal, the preferable situation. If political parties were working and doing their work, and demonstrating by word and deed that the things they would do if they got into power, then we would be helped. If political parties, if the Political Parties and Organizations Act was being enforced as is,
but enforced by who?
By the Political Party Registrar. Right now, we have the Electoral Commission acting as the Political Party Registrar. Now, these are two roles that are very heavy. So the Electoral Commission
election management and then regulation.
So actually, Electoral Commission performs the three roles. Number one, it is the electoral management body. So it organizing and conducting elections. That role in itself is humongous. Then it is also the political party registrar, because when you are going to register political parties, you go there. The third one is they are also the political finance regulator, because the money that goes into NOP and NRM and other parties in parliament goes through the Electoral Commission. Now, these roles they cannot do. Now, those political parties, for example, we do know that the Political Parties Act, the Political Parties and Organizations Act, Presidential Elections Act, and Parliamentary Elections Act have outlawed vote buying. Everybody knows that vote buying is electoral corruption. Everybody knows that when Musisi or Muguzi goes to offer himself to stand and buys an ambulance, opens up a road, builds a school, pays school fees, these are actions that are intended to bribe voters. So that is vote buying. The problem is that in the rules of in the laws of Uganda, you cannot prove vote buying as a crime, as an offense.
Why?
He will tell us. So because first of all, the one who receives the bribery and the one who gives it
are both unwilling to cooperate.
Are both unwilling to cooperate. So nobody can testify against the other. Secondly,
but there are certain visible things that we can see. For example, if an MP donates an ambulance and writes their name on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, Blazon Musisi donated by Musisi MP to B. You can actually hold them accountable. But the practice,
now you know.
The practice.
Who is sponsoring him?
And that is you. Yes, please.
This man is in the kitchen. So the practice is that this doesn't happen. We do not have a political party regulator, and therefore political parties do not do what they're supposed to do. They have also now become a problem.
We have a regulator who is occupied with other duties, regulation.
Preoccupied with other duties. So that role of regulating political parties is not done. For example, up to today, we don't know. Actually, I don't know. I am elite. I don't actually know the money, part of my taxpayers that we send into NOP. What do they use it for? Perhaps we seek.
But they account every year to EC.
Who knows? Have you ever seen the figures? What do they spend it on? Have you ever seen this? We haven't. The Auditor General, does he audit it? Yeah. We don't know. I have opened books and books of reports of the Auditor General to look for what is his observation on how political parties are managing taxpayers' money sent to them. We don't get it. So political parties are letting us down. If they were, we could have done this. But most importantly, we need transparency and reporting. So we need to know. We need to have provisions that enjoin political parties and the candidates, because most of our people stand as individuals, to declare their sources of money, how much they've been given, but also to come back after the election and report how much did they spend and on what. If we can get these two basics right, maybe we could have checked to a limited extent the too much money that flows in our politics.
I want to come to you, Captain Babu. Your response to what Mr. Muguzi is saying in terms of the laws. Yes, what he proposes sounds practical, the best thing to be done in Uganda. But can you have a democracy in a society where there are no Democrats? Because you need to have belief and trust in those systems and controls on either side.
With your permission, I want to read
please.
something here, very simple. Socrates, prediction of the fall of democracy. Democracy must fall because it will try to tailor to everyone. The poor will want the wealth of the rich, and democracy will give it to them. Young people will want to be respected as elderly, and democracy will give it to them. Women will want to be like men, and democracy will give it to them. Foreigners will want the rights of natives, and democracy will give it to them. Thieves and fraudsters will want important government functions, and democracy will give it to them. And at the time when thieves and fraudsters finally democratically take authority because of criminals and evildoers want power, there will be worse dictatorship than in any time of the monarchy or oligarchy.
This was written over 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, written by a man called Socrates. I just want to tell you that there are people who are just negative, and they get into power, they will control the country. And that's a mafia sort of system which is being used. I agree with him. There's a lot of problems here. We are learning. By the way, we are learning how to even run democracy. We are learning how to run elections. I agree with him that the Electoral Commission should be given certain functions, and we must have another authority which will regulate how parties operate, because it's becoming a nuisance. My friend here will tell you, if something becomes a nuisance, we must make a law. We've made laws which are all over the place. We have the money laundering law, for example. We have the anti-terrorism law.
Anti-terrorism
financing act. And all these things, by the difference between this man who is getting money from funny sources and using it against his opponent or against the people of this country is not very far from being a terrorist. So as far as I'm concerned, we need somebody who can regulate, as he has put it very nicely, to regulate how parties behave and how this money is used and follow it through. In fact, I think Obama in the United States, there are two things you can do. Either you declare how much you're going to do and you stick within those limits, or you say they will not give me money from the party, I will go and get my own money from others. That one you have no limit. They allow them to get as much. But then you must still declare how you have used it. So even now, if they want, you're supposed to declare what you did in the election with your money. Of course, very, very difficult. How do you declare that money? Even if you got an accountant, you tell him you did this and this, and he does debit and
credit. But you see, in Uganda's case, which is why I said trust becomes important, do you think opposition supporters would genuinely support an inquisition into how NUP, for example, raised its money or spent its money? They'll say it's a witch hunt. Oh, Ugandans are very smart. They know that is cosmetic. They will do it, and practically they will not comply because you don't have anybody who can follow it through. You can do it. You can make a law. You can even put the regulator, but then to enforce it, I think Muguzi talked about enforcement. We don't have the capacity in this country. So without the capacity to enforce, are we doomed? No, we're not doomed. We have got to go there. So how do we get there? We have to start. Better late than never. We've got to start. We've got to look at it. We've got to be able to follow it through. And I agree entirely. There are weaknesses within the system. How do we overcome it? Now, like I told people the other day, we've got to have a mindset change. And this mindset change comes with what my friend Lee Kuan Yew called MPH. We need to have people with merit to be in leadership of the country. We need people with merits to run the Electoral Commission. We need people with merits to follow through this in the banks. We need people who have got pragmatism to make sure that this exercise of electing people is done correctly. So we need pragmatic people. Lastly, we need honesty. This country is crying for only one word. Can we become honest to our country for the sake of our children? Let me put it this way. All these things we are doing is for our children. When you go back tonight to your home, look at your children and say, what kind of country are we leaving to them? If we can really feel what sort of country we shall leave our children on, then we can start doing the right things. Because we are doing it for the kids, not for ourselves. And like I said earlier on, we are so weak in what we do. Even the thieves do not know how to manage their theft. So we need to really wake up.
Well, they don't know how to steal.
Yes, they get excited. They get excited with their theft.
I want to come to George with a proposal. I feel what Mr. Muguzi and Captain Babu are proposing would work in an ideal society that is not the Uganda we have today, where you have, it's a poor country trying to, practice a kind of democracy that is out of touch with the reality of the voters, cannot be enforced by whoever is charged with enforcing it. But also you have certain demands that exist, that even if there was a law in place, the people who are going to be bribed will welcome the bribes with open hands, and the person who will not bribe, even if they're the best candidate, they will lose. So don't you think it's high time that because of our unique circumstances, we create a gap, a separation between the voters and the candidates, so that the two don't meet, or at least don't interact directly? So in this case, they only interact through parties. So you have, like what other countries have tried to do, you have Rwanda in the region and South Africa have a proportional representation system where political parties campaign based on their ideas and what they stand for. So DP, FDC, NUP, NRM. They campaign, and based on the number of seats they get in the House, then they produce a roll of representatives. So you could have a George Musisi representing Gulu North or Gulu West, and Muguzi representing Mbara Central, Mbara Municipality. Do you think that would be...
the last time Mwangime tried to stand in Mbara Municipality, what happened?
But you see, now it will be about the parties and not the individuals.
I think, Kwezi, your suggestion is even more ideal. The failure, for me, the biggest question to answer would be, how did we get here?
Yes.
From the time when Captain Babu, maybe you would run with 100 million or 50 million, a successful campaign, how did you get to these amounts? And of course, I know that
maybe the generation of the Babu stand out to be dishonest,
and the population has gone up. But one, political leaders are service providers. In many of they are seen as, you forget these things they say that an MP is not supposed to make roads, he's not supposed to make, but you're a leader. Remember when Honorable Semoji was defending the 20 million which they made them refund during COVID, and was saying, I have people on my door we want me to return the 20 million. Remember the 20 million which court forced them down their throats. So without us addressing that, and of course even enforcing the law across the board, because Henry has turned the guns on political parties. Actually, for me, I would welcome an inquest into political parties' spending and their accounts and all. If it's clean across the board, let us have an inquest of who received what and who spent what. We shall see. Even
a new piece ready for that?
Yes, I'm telling you.
The last time there was into the affairs of your political party and how the NUP ended up the way it is.
There was a court judgment where a court described that as people who were seeking to be seen, attention seeking, and money making. That's what the High Court said.
Honorable Babu. They are only angels in Noop.
Okay, Honorable Babu, make your point when you get some time. So, what I'm looking at is that how do we enforce the law across the board? And if you look at presidential campaign spending, for instance, we're talking about, foreigners and what, even with the scientific election we had, you have a candidate who transports people. A crowd of over their transport, they're given transport refund. You have a candidate who does that. You can't gives them lunch.
They also get lunch.
They also get lunch and
something in the pocket.
And then, of course,
all of them do it.
The mobilizers.
All of them do it.
Okay, Honorable Babu is so preoccupied.
On industrial scale.
No, so
all of them.
For me, my point is, let it be enforced across the board. So, ideally. Then you have an electorate who increasingly see this as a commercialized enterprise. You see that you are going to eat. Because the question would ask an MP that why would you invest 3 billion in a campaign where you cannot even get it, even if you are to aggregate your salary for 5 years?
It's called being jittery.
Yeah, you get. So, and of course, when you ask them for the source and even the expenses, they cannot account. So, ideally, we just have to enforce the law as it is.
Yes. I want to have your concluding remarks. I'll begin with you, Mr. Muguzi. Parliament, in all this discussion, is charged with a serious role, because if there are any laws to be strengthened or put in place, they would fall on Parliament and parliamentarians. But MPs or at least the current MPs have been the primary beneficiaries of these lacunas and loopholes. Some of them have benefited from some of this money that has come from sources that can be questioned. So can we rely on Parliament even to...
We cannot rely on Parliament to make legislation, to make laws on how money should be utilized in politics.
Who should we rely on?
Shouldn't. So I think there is going to be something different. I think there's going to have to be pressure coming from at least the electorate, but also other circles. We need to force that Parliament, because on their own volition, they will not do that. As we're talking about the political parties, one of the questions that came to my head was that if Muguzi says that NUP would welcome any such inquest, what stops NUP from standing out as an island of integrity by going to their website and publishing the sources of money? The reports.
That is public knowledge, Henry. You should know that. They do this on the website. No, what I'm saying, every political party, and Henry should know, every political party, you listen, I'm giving you free knowledge instead of...
Okay, you're using your time.
Every political party annually account. This, you want to raise the debate beyond the street debate. Every political party, it's and which receives money, including NUP. Gives annual audited books of accounts to Electoral Commission.
But he's saying put it on your website for your members.
So that everybody can see, to be seen to be transparent as an island of integrity.
So it's about transparency, but to be seen to be transparent.
But is the challenge that they are not seen or what? Because because I can share them with you now because they are public documents. Publishing things with public documents, it shows that. So for me, I don't think that should have never been a problem.
I'm going to get away from the angels and go to the reality. We need Ugandans to change. Now, I do not agree that Ugandans cannot change. We are 48 million approximately, and I think our people want good elections, and they also want good representatives, and they also want good leaders. Ugandans are dying. They are thirsty from lies and innuendos and whatnot. What we need to do, put all these things we are talking behind and say, how can we make our country respected during elections? What do we have to do to make even the candidates come and tell us what they are going to do for us instead of coming to tell us to meet in a club in the evening? To come and tell us what is... So we need a mind change. We need Ugandans to realize that they are above this unfortunate sea of bad things which are being done. How can we correct them?
And that there's a lot more at stake.
Yeah, starting with the president, by the way. I am asking, can the president help us? Starting even with his own party, which is the biggest party in this country, to make things look clean. We need to clean this country. And we should stop this game people are playing and saying this is happening and that is happening. Let us have an environment where people can have elections. By the way, if need be, and that candidates meeting I talked about earlier on, if we can even adopt that one, put all the candidates in one place, let them talk to the people. Maybe that can help us. Let's find a method that can help us so that everybody in Uganda, not being segregated against because they are poor, but if we go with the system we are going with, it will only be the rich who will be in this democracy. The poor people will not be there.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Captain Francis Babu. Thank you very much, George Muguzi. And thank you very much, Henry Muguzi. And to you, dear listener, thank you for being such a wonderful listener. We'll be right back tomorrow with an even more interesting panel. Good night.
KFM's Hot Seat. It's hot, it's live, provocative, and digs deep into the issues. It's KFM's Hot Seat.